Hello and a very warm welcome to today's webinar, which is Managing Multiple Sclerosis Fatigue. Our presenters today are Jackie Efthimiou and Glenn Barrientos, and I'm your facilitator, Nicola Graham. We like to start all of our programs with an acknowledgement of country. So just to, in the spirit of reconciliation, MS Limited acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So an introduction to our presenters. So Glenn Barrientos is a physiotherapist and he works for our employment support service, helping people with MS to manage their symptoms so that they can stay in employment. And Jackie Efthimiou is an occupational therapist with multiple years experience working in both acute and hospital settings. And Jackie is also an employment support consultant doing a similar job to Glenn, helping people to stay in employment. So I'm going to hand over now to Glenn so that he can start.
Okay, so I'm just going to start up with the webinar objectives. So this webinar will be looking to explore the different types of fatigue that people with MS experience and the range of strategies to facilitate optimum management of this complex symptom. So the webinar objectives: development of a greater understanding of MS fatigue, to develop awareness of tools to help with assessing MS fatigue, and to improve and develop therapeutic approaches and strategies to assist people with MS to manage their fatigue. So I'm just going to go through a short background about MS. I know that we're all health professionals here, so we might have some experience with MS, so I'm just going to make this quite brief. So MS, or multiple sclerosis, is a progressive demyelinating disease of the central nervous system. It is initially inflammatory in nature, so there is no known cause and no cure for MS, although there are disease-modifying treatments available for the inflammatory or relapsing-remitting stage of the disease. The meaning of the name multiple sclerosis is many scars. So when a person has MS, an immune response causes myelin sheath to become inflamed. This eventually causes breakdown of the myelin, which is the protective layer around the nerve. This results in the signals along the nerve pathways to be interrupted due to the damage to the nerve as it is being exposed by the myelin deterioration. Damage occurs at a number of different sites in the central nervous system at different times. This is referred to as dissemination in time and space, and this is a diagnostic criterion for MS. Inflammation in the nerve fibers can cause permanent long-term damage, and the accumulation of external damage is what leads to the level of disability in MS. So there are a number of different symptoms of MS. Some of them are listed here. So there can be many symptoms of MS, but they are all very individual to each person. Due to the non-uniformity in the way that the nerves are affected in each person, not everybody necessarily experiences all of these symptoms, and not at the same degree of severity. While there is no cure for MS, much can be done to manage these symptoms and to slow the disease progression through disease-modifying therapies. So looking more in depth with MS fatigue, so fatigue is a subjective lack of physical and or mental energy that is perceived by the individual or caregiver to interfere with usual and desired activities. So this definition of MS fatigue comes from the MS Council for Clinical Practice Guidelines. So some of the key points that I want to highlight in this definition is that fatigue is subjective. So it's quite difficult to describe how tired you're feeling or how fatigued you are. Fatigue is usually described using our words. We are able to use some scales or rating systems, but these are all self-reported or all subjective, and there are not really any objective measures for fatigue. Fatigue is also another key point is that fatigue is both physical and mental, so it can affect both physical functioning as well as cognitive processing. Fatigue is also the most common MS symptom and is often the most disabling symptom, even though it's somewhat invisible. 80% of people with MS report fatigue as their worst symptom, and is also the most common reason people with MS leave their employment. Fatigue is unique to every individual, and a person's experience of fatigue can change over time, even throughout the day. So, for example, some of my clients, they feel quite fresh in the morning, they have quite a lot of energy, and then as the day progresses, they feel more and more fatigued. So maybe after lunchtime, they start to feel severe fatigue, like they hit a wall. While some other clients may feel more fatigued in the morning. So straight after they wake up, they already feel quite fatigued. But as the day progresses, they get more and more energized. So it is quite an individual experience. I was going to start here with a poll. So poll question. What do you feel is the most influential factor in causing fatigue?
Okay, so I'm going to launch that poll, Glenn, for everybody. And so people can please select one. If you think it's physical factors or cognitive factors, psychological factors, environmental factors, or others, that would be great. And I can see people are slowly voting, and we've got about 40% of people have voted now. And I'll just give a few more moments for people to cast their vote. And just to reassure you, we cannot see who has answered what, so it's totally anonymous. So just jump in and have a go. Okay, that's great. So 80% of people have voted. Come on, the last 20%, cast your vote, and then we'll share the responses. Okay, that's great. So I'm just going to close that and share what people said. So we had 38%, Glenn said, physical factors, 32 cognitive, 18 psychological, 3 environmental, and 9% of people said other.
Okay. Yeah, it's so with that poll, actually, it was a bit of a trick question. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that there are many different factors to MS fatigue and different factors that contribute to MS fatigue, and that it is quite complex. So in this diagram as well, just rolling on from the poll, it kind of highlights that how interrelated or how complex fatigue can be. So from the article that this diagram comes from, so the Philip Kinkel article, it concludes that the fatigue is one of the 4 major symptom groups, in addition to physical, cognitive, and depression symptoms that appear to be related to the disease process in MS. All 4 are interrelated and all occur within the context of the individual's physical, environmental, and psychological backgrounds. So these background factors can impact and increase fatigue levels. So for example, physical background, this includes our clients' comorbidities and fitness levels. So for example, if a person with MS has become physically deconditioned because they are resting more, they'll fatigue much more rapidly with exertion. Looking at the environmental background, so this includes physical surroundings, our clients' social networks, and cultural factors. So, for example, if a person who lives with other people, such as their family or their loved ones, who can help with domestic duties, they'll become less fatigued throughout the day than someone who is living alone and has no one to help them with their domestic duties. Another environmental background that I wanted to touch on as well is the heat. So a common MS symptom of our clients is heat sensitivity or heat intolerance. So heat can affect fatigue, and changes can occur with as little as a 0.5 degree increase in body temperature. So with the heat, nerve conduction slows down, and this can result in exacerbations of a number of different MS symptoms. There's also a psychological background. So whether our clients have anxiety, stress, or depression, and we'll touch on this a bit more further along. I also want to show this diagram, so the vicious cycle of fatigue. So there, again, is a number of different factors that impact on fatigue. So just looking at the cycle, so fatigue leads to increased need to sleep and rest. And this can cause lowered mood because people are missing out on things that they love to do, such as going to work or spending time with their family. This may lead to increased perceptions of pain, which may produce a negative response from the environment. So the family or friends get upset or sad, or the house can get a bit disheveled. So this causes more and more fatigue. As the cycle continues and without intervention, this may lead to highly debilitating fatigue. So one of the reasons why I want to show this this diagram is to just to let you guys reflect on where in the vicious cycle we can look to facilitate an intervention and look to interrupt the cycle of fatigue and make a positive impact on our clients. So when looking at fatigue, it is good to assess what kind of fatigue our clients are experiencing, more specifically looking at chronic versus acute fatigue. So chronic fatigue is the fatigue that is present for any amount of time on 50% of the days for more than 6 weeks. It's fatigue that limits functional activities or quality of life. Whereas acute fatigue, it also limits functional activities or quality of life, but acute fatigue is a new or significant increase in feelings of fatigue in the last 6 weeks. So acute fatigue will be managed differently to chronic fatigue. Managing chronic fatigue is much more about making some lifestyle changes. With acute fatigue, is good for us to kind of monitor any acute fatigue, as it might be an indication of something else. So, for example, clients might have other medical problems that may be contributing to acute fatigue. So things like an infection, the flu, diabetes, pregnancy, or hormonal changes. So in this situation, our clients should see the GP or specialist to have a checkup and look what the next course of action might be. With acute fatigue as well, for people with relapsing remitting MS, so this is a type of MS that has distinct relapses and remissions. An increase in fatigue could be an indication that our client is having an MS relapse. This may mean that they require a course of treatment, such as corticosteroid infusion. And in this case, it's best for our clients to present to the emergency department of their local hospital so they can liaise with their neurologist to determine what treatment is required. It is also important to discuss with our clients if they've started any new medications, as some medications can cause fatigue as a side effect. So just looking at the different types of fatigue, so one of the first things we like to do with our clients with MS is to help them understand, have a better understanding of the types of fatigue that they may be experiencing. So there's everyday fatigue. So this is just the regular fatigue that you and I may experience on a daily basis as well. But there's also MS-related fatigue. So MS-related fatigue is a direct result of changes in the functioning of the central nervous system. Although people with MS also experience regular fatigue alongside their MS-related fatigue. So distinguishing between the different types of fatigue will assist in helping to identify management strategies for our clients, and that way we may be more able to tailor their interventions to the type of fatigue they're experiencing. So again, everyday fatigue. So this is the type of fatigue that we all experience. So this may be due to infection, exertion, medication, depression or stress, pain, the environmental factors and sleep issues. So anyone, for example, anyone can get sick. When we're all sick, we get feelings of weakness and fatigue. But on top of that, people with MS may experiencing a worsening of their symptoms when they're sick with infection. So when their body temperature goes up, they have exacerbations of their MS symptoms as well. So the first MS-related fatigue that I was going to discuss is MS fatigue or primary fatigue. This is also known as lassitude. So this is an overwhelming tiredness, not directly related to participation in activity or exercise. So people with MS often describe this type of fatigue as hitting the wall and that they can no longer continue on. Primary fatigue can occur at any time of the day and for no reason at all. So this is just an example of primary fatigue. I might not go through it right now, just to save some time, but I know you guys have it in your notes. So the second MS-related fatigue is nerve fiber fatigue or neuromuscular fatigue. This is defined as a decline in motor performance during sustained muscle activity. So this is caused by the failure of demyelinated nerve fibers to conduct the messages during prolonged repetitive activities. So a person with MS may find that their muscular strength and their coordination diminishes or stops after repetition. Deconditioning can also play a significant role in nerve fiber fatigue. Some examples of repetitive movements that can be impacted on by neuromuscular fatigue include walking, riding, mowing the lawn, or typing. So any kind of activity that uses the same muscle groups in succession. The last MS-related fatigue I'll discuss is cognitive fatigue or mental fatigue. This is the cognitive exhaustion or failure to maintain performance while completing a cognitively demanding task. So this may include studying computer-based work or trying to complete tasks in busy, highly stimulating environments. So cognitive fatigue can impact on cognitive processing, such as memory, retention, and executive processing. So this is just an example of, at the bottom, just an example of cognitive fatigue from a person with MS. So you start a sentence, and when you're very fatigued, and you can't even remember how you're going to end it, and then you can't remember how you started it. So this is kind of, it really highlights the impact of cognitive fatigue on our clients on a daily basis. Regular conversations can be quite difficult. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jackie, who will be discussing MS fatigue management, fatigue assessment tools and different fatigue management strategies.
Thanks, Glenn. I'm just getting my screen together for you guys. So what do we do about fatigue? Firstly, we need to look at how we can assess it. There's quite a few fatigue assessment tools. As Glenn was saying, they're quite subjective because we can't have an objective assessment of fatigue. Look, most of these tools I haven't used, and I've been working in this position for over a couple of years. The biggest tool I use is observation and feedback from my clients. There are these subjective assessment tools that you can use, particularly if you're working in NDIS land and you need to have an assessment pre and post intervention. So they're really useful in that respect, but I find that with observation and feedback from our clients and using some fatigue diaries and timetables that are included in your handout are actually a better way forward to getting to the root of what's causing fatigue and how to help with those aspects for the client. So overall fatigue management looks at how we can manage everyday fatigue, fatigue management strategies and medication, and that's what we're going to look at in the second part of this webinar today. So medication, obviously we're not GPs, we're not going to be prescribing medication, but it's really important to know that there are medications out there that can help our clients with managing their fatigue. As with all medications, there are side effects. So most of the time, GPs and neurologists will want us to look at the fatigue management strategies first and foremost before looking at using medication. Really important to encourage our clients to go to their GPs and their neurologists and talk to them about the symptoms they are having. Sometimes our clients get to their neurology appointment and forget half of the information that they're wanting to give across to the neurologist or the GP. So it's really important for the clients to write information down, particularly about their fatigue, which they might see as an everyday thing that they're just managing, but it could be something that's really debilitating for that particular client. Okay, so the fatigue management principles we're going to look at throughout the rest of the webinar are firstly understanding MS fatigue, pacing and planning, energy effectiveness, rest breaks, nutrition, sleeping well, exercise, cooling strategies, effective communication, depression, and cognitive behavioural therapy. So this is our toolkit for managing fatigue and helping to empower our clients to put strategies into place that work for them. Not all of these are going to work for every client. There's no rule book, unfortunately, with MS fatigue. So it's about trying different ways of educating our clients, but trying different strategies to see what's going to work best for our particular client. Okay, so we're going to look at understanding MS to start with. So the first step with anything is assessing our client's fatigue to have a better idea of how their fatigue impacts their life. And the first step is helping the client to understand the patterns of their fatigue and what strategies are going to work best for their situation. This is where I find it really useful to have clients use a fatigue diary or a timetable to actually help them see how their fatigue impacts them each day. So a lot of clients say, oh, I'm really fatigued, but they can't tell me when that fatigue level hits its max. Is it a roller coaster? Is it a start and stop? It really depends on what those patterns look like as to what I'm going to provide in terms of the strategy and education around that. Can also assist in identifying if there's any triggers to the fatigue. So it could be a really physical activity that then leads to fatigue. So it's then looking around the strategies that can work around that as well. Okay, pacing and planning. Organisation is one of the keys to managing fatigue. And some of this information might seem common sense, but it's really important to remind the clients of strategies and how they can apply them to their situation. This also applies to us or to any person, whether they have MS or whether they have a disability. So looking at planning your day, planning the day, week and month, and so using external strategies such as a diary, a personal alarm system or a calendar, and that's including appointments, work, rest breaks, and all those little activities that you have to do each day. Planning around your fatigue actually helps manage the fatigue. Balancing your activities, so trying to complete those essential tasks when you're least fatigued, alternating between demanding tasks and less demanding tasks, and they could be cognitive tasks or physical tasks. So you could even look at washing up first, which is quite a physical activity, to then sitting down to fold clothes, which is taking up less energy. Trying to spread out your tasks, so breaking down things into manageable stages. So a lot of clients have difficulty with cleaning their floors, so they might vacuum one room, then have a rest break, come back and vacuum the next room. Or they might do part of the housework one day and the other part the next day. So trying to spread those tasks out over a longer period of time and having rest breaks in between them. Pacing yourself within the task, so resting before you actually become exhausted, and we're going to talk about rest and how important that is a bit later on, but taking time out during activities, as that will actually improve the overall endurance that you have. It's always better to rest before becoming exhausted, so try not to hit the wall and then want to recover that energy. If you can stop before hitting the wall, it actually allows you to increase your endurance and maintain more of that activity and more of that energy. For some people, organisation comes really naturally, not for all. And so it's really important to coach the people that need that organisational level. And prioritising is often the key with organisations. So picking what's most important to you and getting that done when you have the energy to do it. Okay, so another aspect of prioritising and planning is helping the client to make active decisions about how they use their energy. So this is one example of how you can do it. So it might be that your client actually requires this physical assistance to reevaluate their values and their beliefs. So things that are important and things that are urgent should be the ones that are being done when you've got that high energy level. Things that aren't important and aren't urgent can be put down into that lower quadrant, that number 4, where they're not really something that you're going to spend your most amount of energy on. But it's really hard for some clients to determine what goes in each box here, and that's where we come along as therapists to help them with those decisions. Energy effectiveness, this is where OTs tend to love their shower chairs when we're talking about energy effectiveness. So biomechanics is looking at posture, position and techniques while you're doing activities. So by maintaining better postures during activities, you actually reduce the energy used during the task. So a client with a poor gait will increase the energy used and increase their fatigue. However, if you had gait training by a physiotherapist or an EP, that could be beneficial in reducing the energy used while that person is walking. Energy saving equipment, so equipment such as trolleys, stools, cooling vests, remotes, home delivery, disabled parking. There's a whole heap of technology out there these days that can help us reduce the energy used during activities and help reduce those levels of fatigue. Some people are really resistant to equipment and to adaptation. So it's really important to go and visit some of the local stores or the independent living centre if you're in New South Wales, or even looking at equipment online with them and trying to normalise that equipment to say it's not showing that you have a disability, it's actually helping you maintain your independence and maintain your ability to do these tasks without losing every ounce of energy that you have. Also looking at the environment, so looking at the temperature, the light, the layout, if there's stairs, if there's clutter, all of those things can actually lead to someone using increased energy. So we can look at modifying those, and that can help with the management of fatigue. Planning and organisation, I keep harping on about it, but going back to these strategies, it's really important at looking at balancing, prioritising, eliminating tasks that aren't important to that client, sharing tasks or delegating tasks, and looking at time management ideas. So how can they fit the activities they want to do into the time that they've got with the energy that they have? Okay, so rest. We love rest. Rest breaks are vital for anyone with MS-related fatigue. They need to be planned and then other activities planned around the rest breaks. As I said before, you need to rest before you become exhausted. So that's really important to put those rest breaks in before you hit the wall. They need to be quality breaks that are right for the individual. So a rest break for one person isn't the same as a rest break for someone else. It has to be quite individualized. The message that needs to be understood is that rest breaks are equally important as exercises. People often feel guilty about resting. A lot of our clients say, well, I'm just sitting here, I'm not doing anything, so therefore everything else still needs to be done. But the education around that is reminding them that resting actually helps them replenish their energy levels and then enables them to be more independent in the next activity they do. Relaxation assists in making the most of the rest break. So it's important to define with clients the difference between recreation and relaxation so that they can get the best out of their rest breaks. So benefits of rest. So it's preventing the onset of severe fatigue. It's improving the endurance, which I said before. More activities could then be completed effectively rather than half done activities because the level of fatigue is too high. Client will actually feel better overall because then they've achieved all of the tasks that they've wanted to do in that day, and it helps to recharge their batteries, which is really important with MS fatigue. Okay, so how to rest. It's really important to know that many short rest breaks have been shown to have a greater recuperative value than few longer breaks. Relaxation and meditation are particularly useful for rest breaks, and that's something that we can teach clients or even encourage them to look at apps that are available now quite readily. Some people have trouble giving themselves permission to rest, but if we encourage them to use a relaxation technique, they can actually see that as an exercise that's required for them to do, and therefore it's more readily accepted. So relaxation techniques promote stress reduction, eliminate tension, reduce muscle tension, and encourage a calm and peaceful state of mind. They can also assist with better sleep patterns. So a poor use of a rest break would be sitting and trying to read a book because your brain is still working, you're still using energy to do an activity that you consider is rest, whereas that's more recreation. A good use of a rest break is sitting in your car at lunchtime and listening to a meditation soundtrack. So everything is switched off, you can close your eyes, you're not having to focus on anything in particular, and your body can just be. That's a rest break that we're talking about. Okay, nutrition. I'm not going to go on and on about nutrition, but there is a key element to managing MS fatigue, and that's making sure that our clients are eating well and drinking well. So we're aiming towards having good hydration, eating breakfast, proteins and carbohydrates. So even mild dehydration can cause fatigue as blood flow to the organs is reduced, and it slows down your brain and it slows down your client with it. So it's best for the client not to wait until they're thirsty to drink, but making sure that they're drinking a regular amount of water. Proteins and complex carbohydrates help to actually limit that fatigue, especially after lunch. The after lunch munchies, I call it, where we need that extra sugar hit. Instead of having something that's sugary and low in every other helpful nutrient, having a carbohydrate balanced lunch can actually help us work better in the afternoons as well. Eating iron-rich food. Iron allows the blood to carry oxygen to the body's organs. So if our oxygen is, if we don't have adequate oxygen, then our brain can't function properly, and that increases our fatigue levels as well. Avoiding big meals is also really important with people with MS, because when we have a big meal, all of our energy is consumed in breaking down that meal and sending the nutrients around our body. So having smaller, frequent meals is actually an easier way for our body to break down the food that we're putting into us, and allows our the energy to work around us as quicker as well. Avoid filling up with sugary or fatty foods. Easier to say, harder to manage, but definitely something that we need to remind our clients of as well. Caffeine will mask fatigue. So a lot of our clients will say, yeah, no, when I get fatigued, I'll just have a coffee and it makes me feel great. But it's actually not giving them long-term energy, it's just giving them a short insert of energy. So reminding them to go to water instead of caffeine and alcohol for that energy intake, and making sure that they're eating well. Okay. So for more nutrition information, there is an Eat Well, Live Well website, and it's got a tool in it that actually allows clients to answer a few brief questions and then get a nutrition report with some recommendations into it. So this is really interesting for clients to go a bit further with their nutrition. Obviously, we can also refer across to a nutritionist or a dietitian if clients are wanting to work on their overall nutrition plans as well and managing their diet. Sleeping well. So when working with people with MS who have significant fatigue, there's often a vicious cycle occurring of feeling overwhelmingly tired, not being able to do things they want and need to do, not exercising, feeling flat, maybe depressed, having afternoon sleep, therefore there's less time to do things, they're not sleeping well, waking up tired, and the whole process repeats itself. So this is the cycle we want to get our clients out of. There are many reasons why anyone's sleep might be disturbed, so you don't have to have MS to have your sleep impacted by any of these issues. But in MS, sleep disturbance can be due to other symptoms as well. So it's really important that we look at the specific ones for MS. So the location of lesions. For people with MS, lesions in the area of the brain responsible for the automatic breathing during sleep, that has the potential to affect nighttime respiratory effort and can actually cause sleep disordered breathing. The disease severity has the potential to bring about or worsen depression. There's a close link between difficulty swallowing, speech problems, and insomnia, which can actually suggest that people with more severe MS symptoms can have more exacerbated insomnia due to the severity of their MS. Pain is really common. A lot of clients will wake up in the middle of the night with pain or spasms in their lower limbs or upper limbs, and that can really impact their sleep. Muscle spasms, as I said, frequent visits to the toilet if they have issues with incontinence or bladder or bowel control. Depression and anxiety also can be common with people with MS and has the potential to also cause insomnia. Medication side effects can be linked with sleep disturbances, so it's important to look at the mix of medications and whether that might be an issue. And other sleep disorders that clients may have on top of their MS. They may be undiagnosed, they may already know about them, but just understanding where sleep comes in for that client. Sleep diaries are really important to have to make sure that a client is well rested. If a client's well rested through the night, they wake up refreshed, as Glenn was saying earlier, and that means that they're more likely to have the energy to last through the day. And that's just what a sleep diary will record, which is a whole load of stuff. And then looking at managing MS sleep issues, I'm going to go over this really quickly because you've got it in your slides, but those issues can be managed through pain management, physiotherapy, a continence service, going back to the neurologist and a pharmacy review as well. Looking at more of the treatment modalities, for here it's more around medication management, so making sure that whatever sleep issues a client is having, that they're feeding it back to their neurologist and their GP or whoever their treatment team is, so that they're really looking at all of those overall impacts on a client's fatigue level. Getting a good night's sleep, there's a whole heap of research out there at the moment, which is important, not what you do getting ready for bed, but what you do during the day as well. So making sure you're hydrated, making sure you're getting some physical activity, looking at the bedroom environment and what to do during the night if you do wake up. So those are really good things to have a look at with each of your clients. Exercise. We all know the benefits of exercise. They're the same for everyone. And exercise is considered one of the essential pillars in maintaining good brain health, which is so important in MS. We know the benefits of exercise. We've been through them 1,000 times, but it's important to remind clients of it because when they are feeling fatigued, exercise is the last thing that they want to do. Guidelines for exercising with people with MS is avoid overheating is probably the #1 thing. Exercising in a safe environment, particularly if they have mobility issues or balance and coordination issues. Avoiding overexertion so that we're not increasing fatigue levels, and planning a rest break after exercise. So making sure they're not overdoing it, they're not hitting the wall with their fatigue management, and that they're managing their exercise program in accordance to their treatment plans as well. Heat sensitivity is a really big issue with people with MS and will cause lots of increased fatigue. So on hot days, the majority of our clients will say that their fatigue levels are increased. So it's really important to maintain that heat management and helping them maintain an overall the overall thermoregulation of their body. So cooling strategies we look at is hydration, number one. Planning, so if it's going to be a hot day, can you work from home in air conditioning? Can you not be going out to the football to watch your son play in 35-degree heat? Clothing, cool, bamboo, cotton, all wick away heat. So that's what we recommend for clients with the heat sensitivity, but also looking at cooling vests. Sometimes they're a positive for clients, sometimes they're a negative because they can be quite heavy and cumbersome. So seeing what's actually going to work for that client around the clothing as well. Effective communication. So it's really important that the client feels confident that they can talk about their fatigue, not only to their family, but to their friends, to their employer, to their teammates and colleagues. So communication barriers will be poor timing, overgeneralizing, blaming, not listening, making assumptions, assuming that someone can read your mind, which is a big one that clients do for us, dismissing or ignoring, and the inappropriate body language. So the opposite of that is obviously good communication techniques. So looking at timing, when to talk, when to say something. It's really important that clients with MS are encouraged to consider using all of these effective communication techniques and using I statements. So not trying to overgeneralize what they're feeling, but saying, I am currently feeling X, Y, and Z because of my MS, and trying to share what that MS fatigue looks like to other people. If you haven't heard of the spoon theory, and I hadn't heard of it before I moved into the MS space, spoon theory is a really proactive way of explaining fatigue to someone who doesn't have a disability, and it's a really active way of encouraging someone to use those particular ways of explaining MS fatigue to others. So recommend you to look up the spoon theory if you can. That'll be your homework. Creative communication, so rating your fatigue, using emojis. I mean, we're in a world of technology here, so utilizing that, you know, saying that my tank is empty, so I need to actually refill that. Through my kids' school, they were talking about filling someone's cup. So filling someone's cup, not just from an energy point of view, but from a positive feedback point of view. But it can be used for fatigue management as well, saying that I need to rest to actually fill up my energy levels. So just some things to have a think about with your clients. Depression is a big one with MS, particularly around first diagnosis, and up to 50% of people with MS generally report some episodes of depression. It's just something to consider in each client with MS. The biggest thing that I found in looking at MS and depression and fatigue is someone with MS fatigue who rests wakes up feeling refreshed. Someone with MS fatigue and depression who rests will wake up feeling worse because the depression is actually pulling them further down rather than the energy replenishing them. So I thought that was really interesting because both depression and fatigue can lead to similar behaviours. So it's really important to screen for depression if you suspect it may be present and help the person seek treatment and support for that too. Okay, quickly through cognitive behavioural therapy, which I can't do in 5 minutes. I can tell you that now. I'm still studying it myself, but trying to look at how we can adjust someone's thought patterns. So cognitive behavioural therapy is about challenging those challenging thoughts that clients have about I'm lazy, I can't do this, I'm a burden to people, I must push through and get things done. So a therapeutic approach is looking at facilitating change, but challenging values and beliefs that that person will have and supporting self-management around that. So there's loads of stages in the change process, and your client might not be ready to commit to change. They might be at the point of resistance. They might be at the point of the possibility of change. But knowing where your client sits on those stages is really important, because you don't want to push too hard when they're not ready to take on that information just yet. So one of my managers always says it's just little seeds of thought. Just plant them as you're going along, and your client will slowly come along to that action stage. And when they're ready for that stage, then that's when you provide all of that information and education and help them through it. So thinking back to what we started with, we actually listed them in a particular pattern in terms of importantness, but what we left out there was values and beliefs. And I think that sits up really high in understanding each client and why they're so individual, and why everything comes around for that particular client based on how they were brought up and what they believe and what's important to them at the time. So to assist a client to prioritize and plan their activities, it's important to consider the context in which includes an understanding of their values and beliefs, and whether those values and beliefs are limiting their participation in their chosen roles, and why we may need to challenge those beliefs. Sometimes perfectionism can be an issue for clients with fatigue, and where someone has high expectations, that can lead to high levels of fatigue and can be linked with depression as well. So breaking the cycle is looking at how can we change the negative self-talk with positive self-talk and positive messages to us. So how can we change that cycle from negative self-talk to positive self-talk? Okay, we're going to just have a quick poll here, which is looking at what do you guys think is the biggest barrier people face from managing their fatigue? What prevents people with MS from managing their fatigue? Really interested.
Okay, so I've launched that poll and people have jumped in and started voting, which is great. And we've got about 40% of people have voted. So again, we can't see your answer specifically. It's all anonymous, so just have a go. That would be great. And most people have voted now, so just a couple more moments and I'll close the poll and share the answers. Okay, that's great. I'm going to close the poll now. Thank you everybody for voting, and just share the responses there. So we've got difficulty to accept change, 38%, lack of time, 0, nobody put that. Lack of information, to understand, so 23%, lack of information of how to manage, 21, and other, 18. And if you want to pop in the question box, other, or any comments, what you've thought about other, I can share that with Jackie, so feel free to do that. Thanks, Jackie. Yeah,
awesome.
Interesting.
So when I wrote this poll, I originally thought B, lack of time to implement strategies, would be number 1, because that seems to be the feedback with my clients. And I'm not sure about Glenn, he might intervene later, but a lot of my clients go, well, when do you want me to put rest breaks in? When do you want me to organise relaxation? How am I supposed to put exercise in when I've got so much to do? That seems to be the feedback from a lot of my clients. I agree, difficulty to accept change is probably key, because a lot of our clients who are first diagnosed with MS are fairly high functioning, very not perfectionist, but very, what's the word? I'm struggling now. They have high energy, high expectations of themselves, and they push themselves in their area of expertise. So when MS comes along and throws the curveball at them in life, it is really hard for them to accept change. With C and D, that's where we come in. So providing that information about how to understand and how to manage fatigue well. So that's really interesting. I'm glad you guys picked that up. So our job as health professionals is to inform clients of what help is available and help them access those supports and services. And it really is about managing as a team. It's not about the person with MS doing it all alone. It's about linking in with all of these providers to support them through whatever they're doing and through their journey with MS as well. So in summary, people with MS have really complex needs, and they may require a range of different services throughout the course of their disease. It's really important to consider fatigue in any MS referral that you get. No one can predict the future course of MS for any individual. Most people with MS are still very active, and they can take care of their daily needs many years after the diagnosis of MS. And most people with MS actually live a near normal lifespan. So it's really important to know that this isn't just for 1 or 2 years. This can be for many, many years ahead of them. So collaboration and consultation between health and disability services is really essential to make sure that our clients get their optimum care and intervention. Every person is unique, and that's not just every person with MS, but every person. So that you do really need to consider an individual program plan for those people. There's not a shopping list that you can tick off with each client. It's really an individual story. And Nicola, are you going to talk about facets, or would you like me to?
Oh, I'd love it if you could mention something about facets. We are running one, but yeah, I'd love you to let our listeners know about facets.
Yeah, so the Facets program is something that we're actually running through our MS organisation. It's fatigue, applying cognitive, behavioural and energy effectiveness techniques to lifestyle, which is a whole mouthful, which is why we call it Facets. It's an evidence-based group program for people living with MS, and it's designed to help people learn to manage their fatigue. It's a 6-week program that we run online through webinars like this. It's very interactive, and it works around that cognitive behavioural therapy intervention side of things, looking at values and beliefs for the client and how we can challenge those negative thoughts. So if you did have clients that were interested, they are more than welcome to come along and sign up. It's, I think, $80 for the 6-week program, and it's an hour and a half each week. We are currently also filming and recording for an online program, so hopefully that will be available shortly as well.
And we've got programs starting in, thanks Jackie, thanks very much, and thank you Glenn as well. And just with regards to the facets, we've got a program starting in May, and both a daytime and evening program, and there are still spaces, and people do have their cameras on and they're unmuted, so it's a very interactive session. So big thank you, Jackie. I've got a couple of comments from people, and thank you to Glenn also. Lots and lots of really great information, and you can all access this recording in a few days' time, so you can have a re-listen if you need to. Julia's just made a comment really saying, hi Jackie, a number of my clients are just so overwhelmed. It's little by little, and the overwhelmed feeling is very debilitating.
And that can lead to even more fatigue. So it is those small seeds of information that we want to plant with clients, particularly if they're at the stage of new diagnosis. They're just coming to terms with what MS is altogether. So yeah, little by little for sure.
And Sarah's got an interesting question here. Is it recommended that fatigue management or education is provided by a PT and or an OT, or can other health professionals such as speech pathologists have a role in providing education on fatigue, particularly in regard to communication difficulties?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's up to all of us. It's not one health professional's job to look at fatigue management. It's anyone that's working in the MS space or with any client that has fatigue as an issue. And I think definitely speech pathologists have a great role in that in terms of communication, because when people have high fatigue levels, their ability to find words, their ability to communicate with others is really diminished as well. So I think if we were to approach it as a team rather than just the OTs doing fatigue management, so I don't need to worry about it, if we're all giving the client the same bits of information, that's more likely to sink in.
That's great advice, Jackie. And Ellie said, I'm not sure if I missed this, but how long is a good time to rest between activities?
Again, very individual. So for some of my clients, while they're at work, they have very computer-based jobs, so they might leave the computer and rest for 5 minutes, and that might be enough for them each hour or two. Another client that I've got has to have a half an hour break at lunch, or she can't manage in the afternoon. So it's really individual, and it's about trying different things out and seeing what works for that person, and that might change over time as well. So what works today for me might be totally different for me in 10 years time. So it really is a trial and error thing. So there's, unfortunately, if there was an ingredient list, it'd be fantastic, but it's it's a trial and error.
And finally, Paige has asked if facets can be accessed using NDIS funding, and yes, it can, Paige. Majority of our attendees are funded by NDIS. So that's all the questions that we have. Lisa's asking, will the slides be available? Well, you should have got those as a handout, Lisa, so I'm just making a note that it would appear you haven't, and I'll make sure that you get sent all of the handouts, which is both the presentation and some extra handouts. And one last question come in from Nikita, and that's, I have a client with a diagnosis of schizophrenia and MS. He's got no insight into either of these conditions. Any recommendations or info for further guidance for me?
That's something I might need to email some information to you, because it might be that you need to be educating the wider family or carers rather than the client if they're not able to understand what's going on for them.
So, Jackie, I'll pass Nikita's contact details
perfect.
to you. Okay,
Thank
that's
you.
great. All right, thank you very much, guys. I'm going to just close now. Paige is saying thank you, and there's a few thank yous coming in. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my screen to
come back
to play to play with me. I'm just going to change screens then. So thanks, Jackie. Just very quickly wrap up with some housekeeping from us. So Jackie has mentioned to you with regards to the Facets program, which, as I said, starts in May. We've also got a range of resources that you can access, our ebooks, and if you email, I can give you our password details. We've got a range of services, many of which you'll be familiar with, but everything from peer support to employment support, and we're an NDIS provider, plenty of education, and we're involved in research and wellbeing, etc. There's an MS practice, which you can access, which has got some specific practice guidelines for you with supporting people with MS and their symptom management. As I mentioned, we are an NDIS provider delivering different services in different locations. Also, if you'd like to keep up to date with further free webinars specifically for health professionals, then please subscribe to Inform, which is just a monthly newsletter with all our upcoming education on it. So thank you very much. Our contact information here is MS Connect 1800 042138, or there's the email, and you can speak to nurse advisors, social workers, MS experts to support you so that you can support your clients. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks to both of our presenters, Glenn and Jackie, and thanks for taking the time to upskill so that you can help your MS clients with their fatigue, and look forward to seeing you at our next webinars. Bye for now.